It's time for the Engaged Club, the podcast for club managers and operators that strive to create loyal and connected members, guests, and customers. Here are the two guys with the club management and digital marketing advice you need to realize your club's potential. Jim Hope and Roger Kincaid.
So great to be with you for another episode. This podcast is supported by the Canadian Society of Club Managers. And many thanks to this organization for supporting us. And many thanks to you club managers for tuning in. I'm Roger Kincaid. I am the marketing guy from Off Course Golf. You can find us online at offcourse.golf.
I'm Jim Hope, and I'm the GM of the Derrick Golf and Winter Club. Mr. Kincaid, how are you doing this fine summer evening?
Maybe it's a fine summer evening where you are. I still have the head covers on the golf clubs right now. And I've got those neoprene ones that go over the wedges. Got to keep those extra warm.
Oh, nice. Did you buy those from CPG or did they come with the set, or was that a special order?
No word of a lie. I'm wearing my Mexican Mini Tour Club Pro Guy t-shirt right now for this.
Oh, that was the best stretch of 8 pars over 2 rounds ever happened.
I got to grab this toro by the horns, man, and get this topic back on track, because this is the first time in a while, Jim, that we've got a sequel to the last podcast, the one that we did, episode 68, called The Key to Employee Engagement, where you gave us a lot of sage advice.
Why don't we unpack that a little bit, especially the part about what employee engagement means? I think the 8 traits of employee engagement. I thought maybe we could unpack that a little bit and have a conversation about each one of those 8 traits. What do you say?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So the first one I've got is role and job clarity. I think that's pretty important. Would you agree?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. There's nothing worse than starting a job and not knowing, what impact you're supposed to have or what you're supposed to be doing on a daily basis. You're just listless.
Yeah. It's interesting how often, though, you do that to people, right? Maybe you don't have a job description, but, you've created a generic job description, but you really haven't gotten specific for what the position is. And you may have in your mind some very clear expectations for somebody, but you haven't expressed them to them. I find that, I've done it, and I think there's times where I still do it, but it's really weird how that happens.
The thing that everybody wants, particularly from their manager, is to know what makes an impact. What will I be judged on, and what will I do that will make you say I did a great job? I
agree. And I think that people want to know where the goalposts are, right? They want to know if they're kicking field goals, whether they're going straight through the uprights or they're going wide, as opposed to they think they're going right through the uprights, but you've moved the uprights about 10 yards to the left and they don't know that they're not kicking them anymore. So
exactly.
I think be clear with what we do. The other one is autonomy. There's a difference, I guess, between managing your people and leading your people and making sure that you're checking them to make sure they're doing the job correctly, as opposed to being called a micromanager. Mm-hmm. And I think it's a hard balance sometimes, Raj, that you face, between wanting to make sure that you're taking a new employee, someone who's a rookie at what they're doing. You're maybe really clear with what the job is and what your expectations are for them. And you've got a short season, so you want to make sure you've got a short time to get things done. So you want to make sure it's done right. Yet you don't want to micromanage them. So have you got any thoughts on how to make sure that somebody you're giving them enough oversight to make sure that it's getting done right, so that the member services and the expectations of the members are being met, but you're not being a micromanager?
Yeah, I look back at some of the jobs that I've had in my career and some of the micromanagers that I had. It always seemed to me that it was a reflection of their insecurity. Like there was somebody coming down on top of them. And in a club setting, that might be a president, that might be a board member, or that might be, the general manager coming down on the F&B manager as an example. So I was just sort of thought, like, if you find yourself micromanaging somebody, then maybe you're a little bit insecure and you need to figure out what the problem is with your station before you start micromanaging somebody else. But then the other thing too, Jim, is that expression about take a long time to hire but fire quickly, right?
Yep.
If you hire appropriately, if you take a long enough time to hire, you're going to be getting people that really need limited management anyway. You'll be hiring stars that you can just turn loose on the dining room or turn loose on the turf department, and they will get great results without you giving them, minute over minute oversight.
Well, and I think to your point that if you've hired the right person, the hardest thing for us to do sometimes is to let them make some mistakes, to give them enough autonomy and let them make some mistakes that aren't going to be dramatic or terrible. They're just going to be maybe, a little uncomfortable for a moment or two, but it's all fixable and they're going to learn from that, as opposed to trying to stop them before they make any of those mistakes. And that's when I think the micromanaging comes in,
right?
Because you're trying to manage so much and such little detail, so they don't make that mistake that they just aren't able to do their job. Yeah. Which creates, I think the next thing is stress in the job, right? Mm-hmm. You probably, if you've ever worked for somebody who is a micromanager, or you haven't had clarity, so you don't know, as we said earlier, whether you're kicking field goals or you're missing, it's going to put undue stress on you and the job that you're trying to do, which has got to have an impact on the services that you're providing for the members, when you just can't be free to be yourself.
Oh, yeah, exactly. And then there's all the uncertainty that comes with it, too, if you're constantly, changing what direction we're supposed to be headed. You say certainty and clarity. Just everybody needs to know what direction this boat is facing, and we're all pulling the oars in the same way, right?
Yeah, you bet. And if you're, as the leader, getting stress from above, whether it be the manager who you report to or the board, if you're the senior employee, just make sure, and that's one of the reasons we get paid what we do, is to make sure that we don't let that stress filter down to the people below us, because that's just going to make their job as uncomfortable as somebody is making our job. So don't let that happen. And I think the next one is sort of the relationship that you have, both, sort of professional, and often in our business, in the hospitality industry, they end up with these personal relationships, not personal from a relationship, quote unquote, standpoint, but these are the people you have a beer with after work, because you might see on the weekends and stuff, and I think that's something you want to garner at times, because I think that if people can create sort of that family feeling that they get from having sort of a personal relationship with people, I think it offers they become a more secure employee, and somebody who wants to, enjoys coming to work, and they don't want to let the other people down because they feel like they're letting a friend down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's really well said. I mean, we do like to celebrate together after a job well done, if that's sort of opening a beer at 5:01 on a sunny deck somewhere, or whatever the case may be. But yeah, you definitely want that appropriate relationship with your superiors, and I think with your subordinates as well, so that you can celebrate when we've achieved something together, and that there's a moment where we can sit at the same table, despite the fact that we're organizationally at different levels.
Yeah, you bet. So I think it's important that you have those relationships. You've got to be careful that they don't bring undue stress back to the workplace later, something that may have happened outside of work with that relationship. But I think if you have the right people, that probably won't happen. And if it does, you've just got to manage, and you've got to talk your way through that with the folks that are involved.
Right.
One of the things that we struggle with in the seasonal side of our business is hiring those millennials who, like to feel that they're engaged and they're doing something that's important, that they have a purpose in what they do, and that they can see a little growth, that they don't feel that they're going to be stuck in what they're doing maybe for, maybe just a 4 or 5 month period, if they're just a seasonal employee, say on turf care as an example. And I think that no matter what position you have at the club or how long that position is with you for, they need to be able to see that if they're not necessarily going to grow in changing positions, because there may just be a limited number that are available, they're going to feel some internal growth in the fact that they're going to learn something. That if they're on turf care, or they're a server, or they're a bartender, or they're working in the back shop, that they're learning something. They're becoming better at whatever it is that they're doing on a daily basis. That if I'm working in the back shop, then maybe one day you're going to let me change the grips on clubs. Mm-hmm. Maybe one day I can reshaft a club for you. As much as it's not what I'm ever going to do for a living, but it's just something different than the mundane and the minutia of what I do daily. And it shows that you trust me to be able to teach me something new and something different in my position. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I might add to that, Jim, if you don't mind. A manager's obligation to an employee is to make sure that there is no dead end, that there's no roadblock, that this is going somewhere, and that manager is going to look for opportunities for that person to grow and thrive in their career in the club or outside of the club. A great manager, a truly great leader, will let a star employee go to a different job at a different place if it's good for them, right? You should absolutely be willing to take your associate pro and place her at another club in a head pro position if it's a good fit for her.
You bet. Perfectly said. And I think one of the things that people demand these days, and I think as employers we should demand, is that there's fairness in the workplace. Mm-hmm. That somebody comes into work and they know that they're going to get a fair shake every single day. That they're not going to have to face favoritism towards another employee over them. that if they do a great job, they come in and they give it every day, they bring it every single day, that they're going to be treated fairly and they're going to be treated with dignity and with respect.
I think it's also important to communicate that fairness doesn't always mean equality. That somebody who's been at the club for 10 years while you're just starting here, they have a little bit of seniority and there's a little bit more that they have earned that you have yet to earn. And it's important that that's communicated, I think.
Yeah, you bet. I think that's really well said, because sometimes people just think that the position, as much as the title is the same, that means that's equality amongst the two, but it isn't, because somebody else may have earned something else that they're getting that you're not getting. Mm-hmm. And in the serving side, that could be the section, right? Just because we're both servers doesn't mean I'm going to be able to take that section over there that this person's been had for the last 5 years, or that they may be better at their position and they're better able to serve that section, which means that the members at the end of the day are going to get better service, which is the whole purpose of why we do what we do.
Right.
The other one is workload. And this is one that is interesting because it's really personal, isn't it? As to what each individual can handle in the way of workload. If you're doing it, as we talked about, there's clarity in the job. You're giving them a chance to be able to just go do their job. You're not micromanaging them. You're keeping the stress away from them. They can see some growth and it's in a fair work environment. You have to balance the amount of work you give one person over what you give another, and then be able to read the signs that maybe there's a bit of an overwork happening somewhere, and been able to, be able to deal with that person in a way that you're able to understand, where the stress points are coming from them, where that overwork is coming from them, and how you're able to pull that back while they're still able to do the job. And the balance you have as the employer or as a leader is to go, okay, I got employee A who is doing the job that I've tasked them with, and they're doing it brilliantly. Employee B, who I've tasked with the exact same job, is failing, is talking stress and is talking they can't do it. There's just too much on them. They can't, it's just becoming too much for them. And the determination is employee A just a superstar and can do way more than what most people can do, or is employee B just somebody who isn't capable of doing the job that they're required to do? And be able to balance that. And that's, I'm not sure you're going to get that right all the time, but it's something that you're going to need to think about and need to consider. And the last one is recognition. And we spent a lot of time in previous podcasts talking about recognition and different ways to do it. But I think at the end of the day, what it really means, and you told a great story in podcast number 68 about employee engagement, was at the end of the day, it just means looking somebody in the eye and saying to them, thank you very much for doing something specific.
Right.
And being specific about that thank you. So they know that you saw them do something that supports the values and the culture of the organization, what it is you're trying to do from a service level and a hospitality experience to give to your members and the guests. They did that and you recognized them for it.
And you meant it when you said it.
If you're not authentic, they're going to see that right away. And then at that point in time, you've lost credibility with them, which is the opposite of what you're trying to do by giving them that recognition.
Yeah, like there's a real big difference between, the Queen putting the medallion around somebody's neck, or, the president putting the Medal of Honor on, and then throwing beads off the float at Mardi Gras. Right? You don't want to be handing out compliments like beads at Mardi Gras.
No, and your expectations are different with each one of those two. The results that you're looking for are completely different.
All right. Let's wrap this one up.
Those are the 8 steps, I think, to employee engagement, which is clarity, autonomy, stress, relationship, growth, fairness, workload, and recognition.
Yeah, very well put, Jim. Thanks so much for that. And thank you very much for listening. Another great episode. Share this one and share episode 68 as well with your friends inside the club business, particularly those who are dealing with these particular employee engagement issues. And if you like what we had to say, or you want to, pass us a compliment that you authentically mean, by all means, send it to hello@engagedclub.com. It's nice to hear from you.
This has been the Engaged Club podcast with Jim Hope and Roger Kincaid. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. If you like what you heard, share it with your fellow club managers and operators. Until next time, thanks for listening.